Russia and the West. The clash that never cooled down. The rivalry between Russia and the West is a story as old as the Cold War, but far from being a relic of history, it remains one of the most pressing and dangerous conflicts of our time. Though the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the ideological and geopolitical battle never truly ended. Instead, it evolved, sometimes simmering quietly, sometimes bursting into open confrontation. Today, this rivalry has reached a fever pitch, with a renewed Cold War feeling that affects everything from military strategies to global energy markets. The ghost of the Cold War left deep scars in the psyche of both Russia and the West. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 seemed to promise a new era of cooperation, but those hopes were soon dashed. NATO's expansion eastward, closer to Russia's borders, was seen in Moscow as a betrayal of Western promises. For Russia, the post-Soviet era was not one of peace but one of survival, as it struggled to regain its footing while the West appeared to celebrate its victory. In the 2000s, Russia, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, began to reassert itself on the global stage. The West, however, saw this resurgence as aggressive, especially with Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its support of separatists in eastern Ukraine. These moves, seen as a violation of international law, triggered economic sanctions that would become the defining tool of the West's strategy against Russia. The war in Ukraine. The turning point. The war in Ukraine, which escalated with Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, marked a dramatic escalation in tensions. For Russia, the conflict was about more than territory. It was about reclaiming what Putin saw as a rightful place in the world and resisting what he views as Western encroachment into Russia's sphere of influence. For the West, Ukraine became the front line in a broader struggle to uphold democratic values and contain Russian aggression. NATO, once seen as a relic of the Cold War, found itself at the center of European security once more. Military aid flowed into Ukraine from Western nations, and NATO forces strengthened their presence along Russia's borders. The sanctions imposed on Russia crippled key sectors of its economy, from banking to technology, but also revealed the complex web of global interdependence. The energy war. One of the most critical arenas in this geopolitical chess game is energy. Europe, particularly Germany, has long been dependent on Russian gas. Even as sanctions aimed to weaken Russia economically, Europe faced the dilemma of cutting off a major supplier without plunging its own economies into energy crises. Russia, in turn, weaponized its energy exports, cutting off or reducing supplies to certain countries in retaliation for their support of Ukraine. This energy war has had global repercussions. The price of oil and gas surged, affecting economies far beyond Europe. Russia, meanwhile, began to pivot eastward, solidifying trade deals with China and India, both of whom have resisted Western pressure to isolate Moscow. This shift has challenged the Western-led economic order, as Russia seeks to build a new bloc of nations that could bypass sanctions and offer an alternative to US and European dominance. Cyber warfare and the battle for influence. Beyond the traditional battlefields of war and diplomacy, Russia and the West are engaged in a shadow war fought in cyberspace. Russian hackers have been accused of interfering in Western elections, most notably the 2016 US presidential race, where they allegedly spread disinformation and sowed division through social media manipulation. This form of hybrid warfare has become a key element of Russia's strategy, aiming to destabilize Western democracies from within by exploiting their political and social vulnerabilities. Western nations have responded with their own cyber defenses and counterattacks, but the digital battlefield remains one where clear victories are hard to measure.